But hey, welcome back to Big Riff Energy. As it would work out, guys, this is episode 100. Can you believe that?
Hey,
Perfect.
dang, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Hell
wouldn't
yes.
wouldn't rather have it any other way. How'd the shows go? You guys just played some gigs, yeah?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they were
It's
awesome,
awesome.
incredible. Yeah, we did Nashville and Little Rock, and we did the record in its entirety on both nights from start to finish. Which is weird, you know. You're like, hey, this came out about 7 hours ago. We're gonna play it from start to finish and not even give you a chance to hear the whole thing, and so you never really know how that's going to go, but we feel really strongly about how the music flows throughout the record and how it translates to a live setting. And so we just did it. And yeah, it was incredible. It was deer in the headlights in a lot of ways for the whole time. And but nobody left. Everyone loved it from start to finish. And then last night, or Saturday night, when we did it in Little Rock, we actually filmed it and multi-track recorded it so we can mix it and do something fun with it in the future.
Amazing, man. Well, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like I saw you guys do the same thing with the last album. You played the whole Rest album, but before it came out.
Probably CT
You
would
guys are
remember
crazy.
that.
Fearless.
I really,
Fearless.
I don't remember. I remember we did it with Voices once. Like, I think Gravy, it was the only time Gravy had done the mandolin thing. We did that once at Downtown Music like that. I can't remember. I honestly was, Rest is kind of a limbo. We really didn't play that many shows back then. So,
It's a
gosh,
dark time.
Yeah.
dark times.
We'll get into that because I feel like, one of the things with this new record, here we are 13 years later. I've been thinking about just the feeling of the record compared to the previous records and thinking about life and where we all are now compared to then. And it feels like to me, you guys are sort of channeling the same power. Like it's still just as powerful. It's still just as scary. But it seems like, and I can only speak for myself, but I think this applies to all of us. It seems like we're all a little bit healthier, not just physically, but maybe emotionally, spiritually, and that sort of thing. It almost feels like you guys sort of took that suffering and that dark energy that fueled the whole band up to this point, and almost it's still there, but it's almost like an inversion. Like it feels to me like it's being inverted to be like a positive thing. Am I off base there? Is that accurate?
That sounds pretty spot on to me. Like Rest was the depths. That music came from the lowest point. That we could find in the cosmos in a lot of ways. It was a really weird time, and a lot of self-destructiveness for myself. I know at that time, and I was trying to find the raw bottom in those days, and in this day and age, it's like you said, it is the flip of that. There's definitely an inner persistence and almost a mature confidence that we're more focused now, and we're able to I feel like we're able to deliver the message without all of the cobwebs and stuff. And so, I see what you're saying, and I agree with that.
Yeah, CT. It seems like the occultism thing is still there, but maybe the black magic has transformed a little bit more into like the white magic, like the I don't know, just a more positive, uplifting thing. I mean, like I said, there's still pain there, but can you speak to that at all? Any like what's the difference if you try to compare the creative process back in the Rest days to today? How does that feel different for you?
Um, I would definitely say grief and sadness is the doorway. you know, um, It's uh it's impossible not to write about um sometimes. Um but I've always felt super positive about Wake music. Like there's just like these uplifting moments. Um I think the album kind of works that way. You know, it starts out like dark, very dark, but also aware. Um, so where something might just continue to be versions of heavy darkness, I think it is instantly like, you know, out of that and progressing by song two and three, just to where the entire album is kind of a shift in awareness, you know.
I feel
Um,
that it comes across. And the first song, "You Swore We'd Always Be Together," definitely to me, vocally and what lyrics I am gathering in the first section, that to me seems like the most painful, bleakest song, and it reminds me a little bit, not necessarily like musically, but almost just where it sits in the album and how it introduces you to the album. It does kind of remind me of the finality from Voices of Omens, and that it's just like you can just feel this real, genuine loss and grief that we're all very familiar with, you know. But whereas like I totally pick up what you're saying, because whereas on Voices, it just keeps going down that hole almost. It's like this one, it kind of like that's where we're starting, and like where can we ascend from there? So that definitely comes across. I don't know
I
if
think it's
this is.
sorry,
Go
real
ahead.
quick. I do think it is worth interjecting to address that. You know, like a lot of the differences in this record, going back to your question, is the addition of John and Austin. You know, John brings a beauty to the music that we have never experienced before. You know, he's even though he's been in our circle since the '90s, and we've been like brothers, you know, for 30 years. You know, him being in the band and having a creative input has added a whole nother level of beauty in those layers, and you know that definitely has an effect on the difference between, you know, rest and the new record. So John
Yeah,
definitely plays a big part of that, and so does Austin.
oh
I
yeah,
agree, and
we
I can hear
definitely
it.
haven't we definitely haven't even probably tapped on to John's full potential yet, which
Well, John,
I totally hope to exploit when you know he starts his violin lessons and his I guess harp lessons and
I could hear the John Judkins personality immediately in that first song when it goes to the quieter, more acoustic part. I'm like, there's Johnny's Tennessee spirit right there with the lap steel and everything like that. And so for listeners who or viewers who may not be fully versed in the history of this band, John, you started on bass, and then you moved to, I guess you would say, rhythm guitar position, and you were you playing lead guitar position at a certain point? And you've basically you've covered like many roles in this band, so just walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, the positions for me started, of course, as bass, and there was even an eagerness at some point. I think when we played Hot Springs, where I did bring the lap steel on stage at some point. There was a gap. I don't know which track it was off of Rest, but we were heavily playing that album, and so I was even trying to like any space where I'm not playing the bass, I want to get the slap steel in here, whether it be with an ebow or using the bar, just to kind of start to interject some of that,
so
you know,
you
my
were
feelings
playing
into it.
that lap still on the calling on that
It was the
whole
calling. Okay. All
damn
right.
man we gotta bring that
I
shit
know.
damn
Yeah, exactly. And
man
so when uh, things kind of got a little hectic there, I think Jeff referring to maybe some dark years there where we weren't sure who was playing guitar in the band, and we weren't sure if bass, you know, where bass was coming from and all that. And we had like Newman and Kiffin and Gravy and me, and then John, you can move here, and who's going to play guitar here? So at some point, it switched to where I think we did one show with Gravy on guitar.
2018.
Yeah, it's a Whitewater. I think we had Gravy and me on guitar and Reed on bass, and um, and so yeah, I was really just going straight from that learning the rhythm stuff to trying to figure out the bare bones piecemeal guitars and trying to find the harmonies when for with Gravy at that time. And so that was kind of a struggle, kind of like, okay, learn this in a few months. And you can imagine the bass is pretty insane on these songs and albums, but then going to the guitar and trying to figure out what Kiffin's doing, listening, watching YouTube videos, listening to every record, taking my left ear off so I can hear the right ear better, just because I know that Kiffin's on one side or the other. And so that was really a challenge I was totally up for and excited about. But once we finally solidified this with Austin, it was amazing because he is such a student of life and music and ready to absorb, engage, and actually start the process of learning songs that we didn't even ask him to learn, that sort of thing. And him coming in, we really began to dial in this sound. And I was able to, since Austin's such a player too, he's a technical player, there are things that I can do on pedal steel, and Austin can still make it sound like two guitars are playing. So it's not like we go from dual left right guitars down to just right guitars and a pedal or lap steel. It's like Austin's able to handle the width of the guitar sound at the same time as one person, and then I can go right down the center with this melodic passage or this ethereal sounding thing. So massive props. I'm getting chill bumps just thinking about it. Like whenever we locked that in, man, it was like everything's going to be okay. Like everything's going to be fine. We can do this. There is no ceiling for this band now. There's only, wide open road there.
Beautiful. I know the whole thing has been sort of a feeling out process too for the last whatever decade. Not just with the guitar situation, but Jeff, I even remember you sending me some demos. Dude, when I had my old podcast, I had talked to you and I had talked to CT on there, and it was sometime around there. So might have even been 2016 or something. I remember getting some demos, and I think they were in strange tunings, and I remember some of it kind of reminded me of Woven Hand. So I wanted to ask about that. Like, you've been working on this album or songs for a long time, and I just wonder, I'm sure there was a lot of material that didn't end up on this album, and then you have the songs that did. And I wonder, like, what were you just kind of following intuition, or were there specific things you were going for these songs that would make a song jump out and be like, okay, or was there like a first song where you're like, that's going on the album?
Well, so I'll explain it kind of in chronological order as the way it happened. So when I got sober, I guess it was probably 14 years ago, I struggled to deal with how am I going to find this music out of the cosmos, the ethereal plane that I used. I used to get wasted to get up in the ethereal plane and find these sounds and kind of channel them. I was unsure if I would be able to find that music without the mind altering stuff. And so I was afraid I'd just end up writing like stoner rock, 5/7.
You told me at one point, man, you're like, all I'm coming up with is like bullshit rip off Place of Skulls riffs, and I love Place of Skulls.
Me too. But,
I was just listening to
and so like I was really nervous about writing sober and still coming up with this spiritual music while being trapped in the physical form, and even more aware of the physical form. And then the strangest thing happened. I'd been playing bass in Deadbird. I just joined Deadbird not even long before, and Alan Short from Deadbird, he invited me to his 40th birthday party where we were bringing acoustic guitars and we were going to just jam in a cave. He's like, there's this cave right by the campsite. Let's bring acoustic guitars. And for whatever reason, I'll never understand it, as soon as he invited me to bring my acoustic guitar into this cave and jam with him, this like massive supernova of creativity just lit up in my myself, in my inner self. And I started writing all of this music just effortlessly, and a lot of that all became Lights Inside the Woods stuff. I came up with an alternate tuning for that, and that's where a lot of that stuff came from, the stuff that I was sending you in those days as well. And then in 2018, I just started hearing this other music that was clearly Wake. As soon as I would hear it and I would start playing it, I was just like, this is clearly Wake stuff. So I started recording it and sending it straight to CT, and just being like, dude, I think this is like Wake stuff. And he was like, yes, it is. And so within like a 5-week span, I came up with an hour's worth of music. I didn't write it. I'd take no credit for it. It just happened, and it was completely out of my control. I was just lucky enough to have the gear to capture it. And so I was just sending it out. And so that an hour's worth of music came out of 2018, and a lot of that material is what's on the new record. But then it kind of went quiet a little bit. There was some music happening, but then in 2021 is when I had another like overwhelming session, and it was another 5 weeks of just overwhelming music that I captured. And so we ended up with 2 hours worth of music, but we weren't very active at that time. And in 2021, of course, the world had just opened back up from COVID, and we had learned how to file share and stuff like that. But we weren't coordinated personally enough to really do much with it. And so it wasn't until we got out of COVID that we started like developing everything. But yeah, so there were two hours worth of music in total. We've used an hour's worth of it. And one of the songs was Infinites that we did on the Movement for Black Lives compilation on Bandcamp. Infinites, that was one of the songs as well. But yeah, there's still some music floating around out there.
You think any of that'll get used on subsequent releases, or?
I'm sure, yeah. I think one of my favorite pieces of music that came out of all of that stuff has yet to be dove into. So there's a 17-minute song that we haven't even really, yeah, that we're just now kind of licking the salt off of.
Cool.
I mean, I've listened to it probably a billion times.
That's 17 billion minutes.
Yes, it's great. It's great. I'm not going to tell you about it, but off camera, we can.
Yeah, sure. We'll get into that in private. So one of the highlights of the record for me, and anybody who's well versed in 70s rock and roll or Arkansas or anything like that, is you, CT. I know you've been working with Jim Dandy from Black Oak, Arkansas, a lot on all kinds of different stuff, and you got him on the record, which I think is incredible. And I heard, I don't know if it's a type of story we can talk about publicly, but I heard there's like a crazy story of typical Wake chaos with that whole Jim Dandy spoken word part. Is there a story there?
I mean, everything is a story, but like what? I mean, have you heard anything I can leap from?
Well, I just I did a podcast with Sanford Parker the other day about if you walk before you crawl and voices and stuff. They're doing some like Hall of Fame on Voices of Omens or something. I think that's coming out tomorrow. But Sanford, at one point, he was just laughing because he was talking about recording voices and how the studio was haunted, and he was like, even now, I feel like they're the most haunted band that I've ever worked with. And he has implied that there's some sort of haunted, weird chaos story with the Jim Dandy thing.
Well, I mean, I know I probably won't be as mythical about it, but Jeff was pretty brutal the entire time. So you could say it was Jeff or a ghost, just leaving all these little shitty notes around the studio. It'll never be an album without Jim Dandy.
Well,
post or whatever. It'd be like the first thing you see when you come to the door.
I mean, a lot of that too is just because in the original 2018 channeling session where that song came from in particular, as soon as that music came to fruition on the demo, I could hear Jim Dandy's voice. It was later, the Jim Dandy's part actually didn't end up being as long as I had originally imagined. It was kind of short, whereas the intro is like 7 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. But so his part is only like 2.5, 3 minutes or whatever. So we had to kind of move it from the originally imagined location. But as soon as that song came to be in 2018, I could hear Jim Dandy's voice. I didn't know the words that he would say, and then CT had reminded me that he originally wrote that poem to be used by us along when CT was doing the documentary, the Black Oak documentary. And so, like, I knew it was out there. We just had to get it. We just had to go. We have to call him.
We always had that. So it was just like, if we could just make a new album, we got gold. Jim's already written the first part to it,
Well, it's beautiful, man. It fits into the ethos of, it's always been a samples and spoken word stuff. And CT, you even kind of have like your Pentecostal shouted spoken word approach on certain sections. That's always been an ethos of the band that's made it really unique, I think. And, I was joking, like the old samples are all about, it was nasty and it was about not glorifying drugs and the psychedelic experience and stuff like that. But again, it's like an evolved version of that where it's more of kind of like a warning, and I think that fits so perfectly with the ethos of the band, but also like this sort of new evolution, You have a song like
Yeah,
you have a song like that.
You be careful out there, kids, with them psychedelics. You hear me?
Right. Well,
Stay on my lawn, but take this little warning, while you're here.
Yeah, you compare it to like, is it Woodson Lateral where they're talking about huffing glue and shit like that? We've gone from huff and glue to like beware of the, use psychedelics responsibly, if you will,
I'll say this, I think kind of what you were getting to earlier is Jim Dandy had written this and he had committed to it at some point, but we were leading up to it and we just didn't have any contact back from him. And we're like, okay, we're kind of getting close here. Like Sanford's waiting to finalize mixing and we're like, where's Jim?
Yeah, he had not,
we just didn't know.
He wasn't texting back, is what I'm saying.
Right.
He's the kind of person that will text you. He will instantly call you back and usually stay on the phone and rap for, and he just wasn't getting back. And I was like, and it's the kind of thing where if you message him once, you can't do it the next day and the next day and the next day. And then it's like, you got to wait your cycle of hitting him up, and, I don't remember when it was or if it even happened. Did it happen while we were in the studio that he finally at least reached back?
I think it may have been like right when we were out of the studio and listening to the rough mixes or something. Because it was right when we got the first mix back.
He eventually was like, "Yeah, I've been here. What are we waiting for?"
Dude, I'll never forget the feeling when CT is like, "We got Jim. We're Friday. We're going to his house or Saturday, whatever." And I was just like I just grabbed all the gear I could get. And we just threw it with like microphones and cables and laptops and interfaces and stands and duct tape. And we just like went to his house and had probably one of the days that I will remember as I'm laying in the hospice bed at the end of my days. Like I will never forget that day. Like it was such a magical day at Jim Dandy's house.
It was. Before we got to his house, we stopped at the grocery store and picked up a little green room of what we would set up for, our favorite legend in the world. And like, you think you might like this? You think you like, like a little fancy area. And he chuckled when we brought it in. He really was. And I personally have hung out with him just because of making the documentary that I did with them. But getting to hang out with Reed and Jeff and Jim Dandy was just, like the biggest, like one of the coolest moments ever in my life. Like
It's like hanging out with a real, actual Santa Claus or like a mythical figure.
it,
That's amazing.
It is. Absolutely.
it is. And one of the coolest down to earth things is we were he was set Jeff the whole time he was getting busy and starting to set everything up, to record this. But he was going through everything, like he was trying to show us. Like he would break out photo albums, be like, "This is me, and this is this," and then he was breaking out demos and
Oh my
singing
God.
Such
along,
good.
just singing along to them in front of us, and like the new album that had just come out, it was just like us back in the day where we'd be like, "Man, listen to my new record." Like, and we were just looking at each other like, wow, and we he did this for so long because we kept trying to be like, "Okay, we got to record this," and he'd just be like, "Well, hold on, man." Like we're hanging out, and it was fun. He was, rolling doobies, and like, we were trying not to drink because we knew we had a ride home. And Jeff don't drink, but we were still like, maybe we shouldn't drink, man. Like if we do, we will be spending the night here at his
Yeah.
house.
That's dude,
Yeah, I
that
think
sounds like the signature Arkansas like studio or recording or hangout experience. Every single recording
No,
experience I had in Arkansas, it was like you'll track for 30 seconds and then somebody will say something about some obscure like Seventh Star, the Tony Iommi solo album, and
yeah,
you go down that rabbit hole and then you go down this rabbit hole,
yeah,
That's
that's
an
Deadbird.
Arkansas thing.
That's definitely being in Deadbird. Like, I
no, I
mean,
was about to say, I bet that's like a night of just recording with Chuck. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
it seems like the
Amazing.
whole hangout.
So you got some shows coming up, but one in particular. I was telling CT before we got started, I got to tell this story. I'm doing these like band interviews on this podcast. Again, I took a little break, but I started to realize that something I like to do is I'll go for a walk or a run the day before, and really listen, do like a deep focus listen on whatever record, whatever band I'm talking to, and it sort of gives me like a different way of experiencing it, maybe like more subconsciously or something. But I was doing that with y'all's record yesterday. I was out in the woods, like walking around, listening to it, and I had this thought. I was thinking about the Acid Bath reunion shows because I'm going to see them in Chicago, and I've just been thinking about it a lot. I'm really excited that they're back, and I think they're doing it in the coolest possible way. But I had this thought listening to y'all's record. I was thinking about the bands that I had seen announced on the shows thus far and how cool the selection of bands is. And I thought, man, Acid Bath hadn't been a band in 25 years, and they're from the Southern Underground circuit, and Wake hadn't done anything in album wise in 13 years. And I had this thought, like, if I was in charge of those Acid Bath shows, I would put Wake on at least one or two. And I got done walking and I looked at my phone, and I think I saw our friend Jeremy posted or somebody. But the first thing I saw was that you guys are playing with Acid Bath in Florida. And I was like, I couldn't fucking believe it. I felt like I manifested that, not to make it
Yes.
about me, but I swear to
Thank
God,
you.
I like,
Thank
yeah,
you.
you're welcome. I could not believe it, dude. So I got my ticket to that, but tell me a little bit about how that came together and the shows you guys got coming up.
I think it was just the right time. Of course, right when they came out, like with the first shows, I was just like, "Sammy, we'll drive there and play for free, man." um, and then as they start popping up, and it's just like you said, I was specifically noticing it was our kind of bands, that they were playing with, and um, it just went down enough channels to where right at the time we had hit them up they were like, yeah, let's party, So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
this isn't the first time that Sebastian, when they played in '96 here, and they played in North Little Rock, and a lot of people don't know, but yeah, they actually played here in '96, right before Pagan Terrorism Tactics came out, or it might have been right when it came out.
yeah. It was just like no, it was months before it came out. Because I don't know if you remember, Kiffin got it early and he played it on KBF Halloween night at midnight.
Nice,
and
yeah, awesome.
and we all put the tape recorder on. like,
So
and
so we've been in that circle since those, since the original days. Like we've been friends with Sammy and Dax, and didn't really see as much of Sanchez once he went to after Agents of Oblivion broke up. But we've been in the same, breathing the same air, in the same geology as those folks. So I think it just makes a lot of sense. And it just so happens that we're going to New Orleans and Shreveport like a week before the Acid Bash show. So we'll drive down there and play, and then come home, and
then
then I'm getting back in the car and driving right back down there for the
yeah.
Exhorter show on Wednesday. Because
Oh
I haven't
wow.
ever seen Exhorter either. Like I gotta see Exhorter.
Yeah, same here. We got tickets for the Friday night, so it's just like wow, you know.
Well, I'll
But
see y'all in
Yeah.
Florida, man. And that's right around the corner from you, Johnny. That's pretty convenient.
Yeah, it's so funny because that is happening in late June, and I don't foresee Wake ever playing any deeper into Florida itself. So I'm trying to gather up as many like Miami friends as possible. But at the same time, I'm actually about to be moving back to Tennessee. So like my family, my daughter and her mom are actually moving back to Tennessee the weekend of that show. And I got the email from her about that, about, hey, we're going to be moving back here, and of course that means I'm moving back, which is wonderful. But also, like 2 hours later, we got confirmation that the Acid Bath show was happening with the date and everything. And it was like, holy crap. Okay. How, this is all amazing, but what? I got to figure out moving and logistics and all this stuff because, I need to be in Little Rock for a week for us to jail and start performing and stuff. So, uh, it's going to be a really like a great sending off for me out of the lower half of Florida for me,
Going
so
back
I'm,
home,
I'm
buddy.
super sick. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In a couple of ways, yeah. It'll be very confusing goodbye, but I'm gonna be stoked and on cloud nine, and already so many people from Tennessee, like my buddies from Tennessee, have bought tickets to come to that show. And same with Little Rock. I know I've seen so many people posting like, got our tickets, got our flights, got our hotels. Let's make this a big party. It's gonna be wonderful, man. Just to go with these guys, Assabet, I don't think ever came to Middle Tennessee, or at least if they did, I wasn't aware of it. But as soon as I found out about them, I was also finding out at the same time that they were no more, and I just never thought that this would happen, and I would get the chance to see them, much less share the stage with them. So,
Yeah.
So
blown away and beyond excited.
me and Jeff saw him in Memphis, and how many people were even there?
Yeah, it was. I still got the shirt from that night, but it was
It was
yeah,
not
it was.
as many. They were opening for DRI, and
Mm-hmm.
there was not many people there, and it was obvious that our car came just for Acid Bath. Like 4 or 5 of us, we were brutally on the front row, like looking and aware who we were there for. And DRI let them play longer. They were like, man, no one's here. These people drove all the way up to watch you guys. And
That's
Yeah,
their last tour they ever did, I think,
it
too,
was,
huh?
huh?
What was
I
that
think
their
so.
last tour they ever did with
I
DRI?
don't know, but Jeff, it was either December of that year or January. It was so close that I can't remember. Where our show was like August or September after that. like
I
the
just
skate
remember,
park show.
I just remember how professional they were in that environment. Like, like Jimmy's back there testing every trigger, and they got this front of house guy, and they're just like monitor mixes got to be perfect. Like, and those in that day and age, we were used to just hand me whatever crusty influenza covered microphone you got, and I'll put it up against my mouth. But like, they were like, in those days, they were like super pro. They had a crew, and they had all kinds of they had all kinds of cool gear, and they were actually way more professional in those days than a lot of the other bands.
I think this the way they're doing their shows is super professional and super unique too. So I guess they still kind of have that mentality. I love it, man. I think they're changing the way they can control some things. They have control of how they want to perform, when they want to perform. And I love that. I love that so much. I think this is a big thing for all of us in the underground world of music.
I agree. And so many of these reunion type of things nowadays, it's CT or Jeff, one of you said, we noticed that they were playing with like our people. So somebody in that camp, or all of them, is staying true to the course, because so many of these like more kind of, not saying this qualifies, but more of these cash grab kind of deals that are happening now, it almost never seems to be like coordinated in a way that is really geared towards the fans, like the real old school fans of the band. Like, I think there's pressure behind the scenes to have to see dollar signs, and that's it, But I mean, the selection of bands, like you're saying, Johnny, the whole strategy, it's almost kind of showing us all that there's a new way of doing things. And we've talked about it, kind of the way you guys are doing things is just do a weekend and make that shit like really count. Make it as cool as possible with the best bands, with the best people, for the fans, So I'm just like, I'm thrilled that y'all are getting to be a part of that. And, like I said, I was debating yesterday, and I saw there were 8 tickets left, and my wife was like, dude, you can't miss that. You manifested it. You gotta fucking go.
It's your show.
Yeah, so I'm there, man. And then I'm going to Chicago too, because I thought it would be a lot of fun to see them with Sanford. And I want to talk about Sanford, because he's made every Wake record since If You Walk Before You Crawl. So you've been working with him for a long time. What was it like rekindling that working relationship on this album?
I mean, we needed him. I mean, that's exactly what we needed, because we were just so, we had separated so far, that we needed a security blanket, to not, I don't think it would have worked if we would have had to drive to another town. I don't think it would have worked if we had to learn how to gel with another engineer. We needed him. And he's amazing for that, and he knows us. I remember when we were doing Rest, I would hear something and think something, and his hand would do it on the fader. Like, we were just so synchronized after doing all those records together, and there really wasn't anybody else that could have pulled this off. And he, even up until the last minute, it's we talked about doing things for so long, but it just never came to fruition. So I'm sure until he got to in his car and started driving to Arkansas, he was probably waiting for it to all crumble until the last, just because it was just such a huge effort on everyone's behalf. Every member of the band, everybody at Relapse, everybody. It was just such a huge effort to make this happen, and just a lot of trust in each other that we're going to pull this off together. And we just needed him, and he was there for us like he always has been, and I'm sure he'll always be there. We're family at this point, so we needed him. And I'm more proud of the production of this record than any other record. I've probably listened to it maybe 976 times at this point. And every time I listen to it, there's, any musician, Nate, this, every musician has cringe moments, and that's just part of listening to your own music, and generally the cringe moment level is usually pretty high, because we have high standards for ourselves. And for this record, when I listen to it, the cringe moments are very few and almost non-existent. And that is a direct result of working with Sanford. I mean, the mixing process was extremely brutal, because we remote mixed everything, and that's a lot of Zoom meetings, and I mean
We've never
a
done
lot of
that,
failed
you know.
attempts. Yeah, we've never done it.
So, and we don't want to do it again, but still, it's something you're just unaware of, really, you know.
Yeah, it's harsh. It's harsh to have that, because there's a lot of failed attempts. I mean, you get a mix back and you're just like, not it, man. And then you get a mix back and you're like, yeah, kinda. And then you get another one.
But
It's like, okay,
everything
well,
we've ever
this,
done with him, everything we've ever done, we've done all together in like a day. And it's
Right.
Mhm.
so to go from like sitting by each other, it's just like Jeff said, in the full day of mixing process, most of the stuff we were thinking, it'd be like he would just do it without us ever having to say stuff, you know. And but you have to say things in a remote.
That process is
It's
brutal,
it's
man,
not the
because
same.
even
It's
even if you're mixing real time in person, the thing that I've noticed in myself about the mixing process, I really don't enjoy it. I really, really don't enjoy it until you hear that first one you're like, that's it. Because you are fighting, or at least I am internally the whole time. You get so fucking sick of hearing it and having to listen to it, not for enjoyment or not for a sense of accomplishment, but you're only listening to what's wrong about it. And so you're
Yep.
having to fight. There's this voice that's like, just quit, just give up. It's good enough. Just
we did
ignore
that.
that thing that's bothering you. And people have to understand that you have to fight that. And it's hard.
Yeah, send it. Send it was the phrase. And we were just like, just send it. Just fucking send it. Fucking send it. And luckily we have
I
people like
mean,
John, though. John's attention to detail, and John, I'll let you chime in on this, but that's another great thing about having John now, and being this in the forefront, is John has an amazing attention to detail, and he was pointing out things that, you know, I was hearing and just being like, fuck it, but his attention to detail was so present and powerful that, a lot of the attention to detail, a lot of the high quality aspects to the mix is because of John.
well, B too. I mean, B's the biggest. If B believes in something, she's a fucking cheerleader. Get out of her way. You're going to be flattened, to the ground. And so B would be like, I'd be like, man, I don't know about this part. Like I'm hearing this, and everyone else is like, oh man, I think it's fine. And B would look at me and be like, is it going to bother you every time you listen to it? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, fucking do it. Recut it. Let's go. You know what I mean? So it was like I'm a very like I can be a passive guy, kind of like I have a preference, but I don't want to like hold up the process. I don't want to add another hour to today or something. But B is such a strong-willed and earnest, honest person. She would prop up my intuitions and say, do it, make that
Yeah,
thing, make that thing happen.
it got to the point where B was actually, I mean, she was like conducting us to mix. She'd be like, Reed, get over here, listen to this bass tone, is this what you want? Like she was like managing us in the mixing setting. Like yeah, she was a ultimate warrior. When we had all kind of tapped out, it was just like, just fucking send it. B was the one that really made sure that those fine polishes were added at the end.
There's the other line. I don't care anymore. Send it.
Care anymore.
Brittany she's always struck me as like the spirit guide slash hype person of the band. So that checks out.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
the force. She's the force of nature.
I will
Absolutely.
say this. This hasn't been mentioned, I don't think, enough, if at all, in any interviews, but Jeff made an insanely wonderful choice of choosing Magnus Lindberg to master this thing from Cult of Luna. And when he sent back the first master, we were like, this is it. Like all of our doubts
First
about how the
one.
mix sounded. First one, it was freaking insane. Like by the end of the day, we sent him the tracks like that morning. I don't know what time it was in his neck of the woods, but by the end of our day, he had sent back a master, and we were like, we have like maybe 2 notes to send you. And so the massive sound, the breadth of this album when it slams, and you're like wondering, this doesn't sound like it's coming from my ears. It sounds like it's coming from my body. This whole sound of the dropping, especially like song 6 or 5 and after reverse. That Magnus, you know, maximum props to that guy.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I when it's heavy, it's not just heavy, but it's like wide and deep and almost, yeah, like all encompassing. I was noticing that yesterday. Speaking of B, obviously she's not here with us, but she has performed like a little bit of what I would call like clean singing in the past, pretty sparingly. But there's a moment on this album where she's like right up front. B and CT here are kind of doing like a call and response thing, and she's like double tracked, clean Beatles, Pink Floyd vocals. What was that experience like for her? Was she a little bit nervous to do something new like that?
I mean, she's a singer. She sings. I mean, me and her have lived together for 30 years, and she sings. She sings all day. She sings in the car. She sings in the garden. She's always singing. And so, I think for her, the biggest challenge is the microphone and the amplification when you electrify your voice. Because when it comes to singing, no, there's no challenge there at all. But when you start, having to use electronic devices, that's when it, was a challenge. But she nailed it. I mean, she's a natural. She sings all the time. But a lot of it was just kind of she's always been about doing what's best for the music, and
That's what I was gonna
and
say.
mhm,
You got
and
to
that
give her the best that part. Um, I mean, and I know it wasn't our music, but that part at the end of our Black Sabbath cover, I mean, it's what to me the end of the writ was just a big wide door of what we could do on this next album. Because on the writ, it's a harpsichord. So John just does the lap steel. And then instead of Ozzy, I know, I know. I mean, I remember us talking about it, like, what are we going to do? And I was like, Brittany's going to sing on that part, man. And dude, it was just like, bing. It was like a light for that whole, to me, that's the coolest part of that song. And it really did. Like Jeff already had everything done, but when we did that cover, I was like, this is what we can add to what Jeff made for us.
I'm glad you brought that up because I spaced on that cover. It's been a while since I heard it, but that is obviously a gateway with her clean singing and Johnny's stuff, and that totally makes sense. That's a great cover,
yeah.
by the way. That's one of my favorite Sabbath songs.
Us too. Well, I think even in '96, were like, we're going to cover this, like as like one of the first dumb ideas that Wake ever had, as a 4-piece. And we even like, jerked around with it at in the jam room for like, I think once or twice. And so even though we never did it, it was always in the back of our heads where it was like, oh, we were meant to do the writ, like,
You guys really excel with covers, man. And dude, it's funny, the Ghoul pentagram going viral and everything. Cause I found a video, I think it was from Emissions, and I just had it on. This was a long time ago, but I had it on in the other room and I heard a song come on and I texted CT. I was like, man, I know this song, but I can't think of what it is. What is it? And I told him to send him the link and everything. And the Ghoul pentagram, man, you guys killed that one.
Yeah, that was always a fun. We've been playing that song for 20 something years, like we've been playing that song forever.
At least since like 99, 2000 or 2000, at least.
That's cool that's the song that went viral too, is the Ghoul out of all the pentagram songs. So it just happens to be the one that we've been playing for 20 years too. But we've always had a lot of fun with covers. Like we've always done a lot of weird covers and like covers that we want to do. Like, when we were doing, I remember we played in New Orleans I can't remember if it was Dixie Tavern or Checkpoint Charlie's, but
Who's
we
Dixie
were like,
Tavern?
it was Dixie Tavern. We were like, all right, who wants to hear some Black Sabbath? And all the Heshers were like, yeah. And they were like, this is the Headless Cross. And everybody's like, well, going to smoke a cigarette.
Man, it's weird how shit comes around because that album's cool now.
Oh, it
Oh,
fucking
it
rules.
was.
It's like very cool with like younger
Yeah.
people and shit. And dude, I remember like we mentioned Chuck from Deadbird. If I had to pick an Arkansas mascot, it would definitely be him. But I lived around the corner from him in Fayetteville for a while. And I remember, spending so much time at his house in his studio, not just recording, but just bullshitting, hanging out. And it took me a minute to get into Dio Sabbath. I was young. I was 18 when I moved to Arkansas. So I missed when that happened originally, even Dehumanizer, that was kind of before I was getting into metal and stuff like that. But, Chuck's kind of the guy that made me start appreciating Dio Sabbath, and he would always preach on Headless Cross too. And I tried it and I couldn't get it. And I remember the day when I was living in Phoenix when I put that record on years later and it just clicked, man. And I'm glad people appreciate the Tony Martin stuff now because
He
I don't want to
fucking
say he's
rules.
up there with Dio,
Yeah.
but he's good.
No, all those
Yeah.
Tony Martin Sabbath records, they're like like Candlemass or whatever Doom at that time. You don't think of it like that because you're like, is it just Sabbath continuing on with other members? Blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's just like what Pentagram was doing in 1987, or
Solitude Eternus or something,
yes, yes, it really is. And when I go back and listen to those, that's the first thing I hear when I hear those songs. It just sounds like modern Doom, what it was at that time.
Yeah, it's like the first wave stuff like Vitus and shit like that was pretty raw. Even like the early Trouble stuff is kind of raw. And I think Candlemass was kind of the band that pushed it in that more kind of epic, refined direction. And yeah, it's just the genre was evolving. And Sabbath could have gone like more into whatever was popular at the time or something like that, but they just almost kind of morphed with what Doom was doing. You're right.
Yeah,
I never
with
thought about
Death
it that way.
Calls, and I mean, just all those songs. They're it's obvious that's what they're doing. Any of them that start slow, where it's just like Neil Murray on bass, just doing these. It's incredible because it's nothing like Geezer Butler at all. It's like they've really made their own. It's weird because they did invent that sound, but they made their own new Doom sound.
Yeah.
Like
it's like neoclassical influence Doom.
because they did at least have the money to still have a proper recording, so it was polished. It's really good.
Well, we could talk about Tony Martin era Sabbath for another hour, but I've had you guys here for about an hour. Is there anything that I didn't get to that you guys want to talk about in relation to this new album or shows coming up or anything?
Yeah, I just want to say before I jump off and get back to work is I just want to say, like, I think it's important that it's known how much we appreciate everyone for still being here and being perceptive to the music that we're putting out, because I've said this before, but like you just kind of don't know when you're gone for a long time, because we've watched the scenes evolve and just get better and better and better and better, and bands just get better and better. And so when you come back and you're like, hi, remember us? You never really know what's going to happen. And the amount of love that we've seen when we released the Magik video and since, but especially when the Magik video came out, like I was just so floored to, follow the comment threads and all of that stuff. And I was just mind blowing to see that, that we still have a place and that our music is still something that, people are hungry to absorb. So I just want to make sure that is known, that every one of you that listens to this record and keeps up with what we're doing. Like we appreciate you so much, and thanks for sticking around with us.
Yeah. We're gonna definitely try to. It was like you said earlier, we can't really tour like that, but we're trying to play as many shows as we can. And I would say because of that, in my mind, each individual show is the power of a full tour. I mean, we are going to deliver just something that is just cosmically unnatural. I just each time with us is going to be different, especially if we come to your town again. Now that John he announced he's going back home, and we hope to tap Nashville like it's our second home again. I mean, we always loved playing there, and we want to play as many shows that we can that make sense, and we want to perform these new songs as much as we can. We love the old songs, especially like what John was saying earlier with Austin. He would learn a song before we would. It makes it so cool to not like come into a band practice and waste an hour learning a song you already played 50 million times,
I'm familiar with that process for sure.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Dude, like
No doubt.
like it don't get, I mean, I love that people want to hear them. It's hard, and not with Austin. He came right in and knew how to play War Against the Christians. He had a couple of times. He's like on the thread, but it wasn't like he was trying to figure anything out. He was showing us how to replay our song, and it was awesome. It was
He's
great.
a phenom, man. He's a
Yeah.
phenom.
So we want to play those songs, and having Austin in the band, it makes it to where we can play any song in our category, but we really want to play these new songs too. We really do. We're super proud of them. I can't wait to just hear how they blossom live.
Yeah, we've got more to offer even with live stuff. And Nate, I appreciate you, man, always being having kind words and being enthusiastic about this band. It's folks like yourself and your listeners and everything that help we all feel a certain way about the music, but when we know that it affects other people in similar ways, man, it's just the wind beneath our wings, brother.
Oh shit!
So,
Fucking Bette Midler drop.
Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for your time. I know y'all are busy. And hey, I can attest to each individual show being chock full of power, man. 'Cause we played a few shows together. I want to say last year, but it was 2 years ago now, technically.
Yeah.
And there's very few bands that get me as charged up emotionally and spiritually, and I felt that connection as strong as ever, man, that first show that we played together. So guys, follow Wake on social media, listen to the new record, The Return of Magik. It's out now on Relapse. Go see him if you can, because there's nothing else like it. Anybody that's seen him can attest to that. And I will see you guys in St. Petersburg, Florida with Weed Eater and Acid Bath.
Fuck yeah.
That's awesome.